Spring has arrived, and South African grain farmers are actively cultivating their fields and planting their crops. This is a time of crucial decision making for farmers as they grapple with key questions about tillage practices, seed selection, plant population, and soil health. Tillage practices are often established as long-term strategies, but adjustments may be necessary based on the crops to be planted that season, or if there's going to be any experimental trials. While planting techniques, seed choice, and fertilization strategies are more flexible and can vary from season to season, aligning with the farmer's specific goals for the season. To answer those key questions, let's first talk about the ideal planting population. This is an interesting one because if you ask a maize farmer in KwaZulu-Natal and another in the Northwest, you'll get two completely different answers about what's best. So why the difference? A lot of it comes down to trial and error. Farmers experiment with different populations on their land, figure out what works, and stick with it. For someone just starting out and not sure where to begin, they typically look for what other farmers in the area are doing and also consider factors like soil type and fertility and moisture. If a field has poor soil fertility, low moisture retention, and light soil, it's better to plant at a lower population density. This way, the limited resources are enough to support fewer plants. On the other hand, the fields with rich fertile soil and good moisture retention can handle a higher plant population. It's worth noting that having a lower plant population doesn't necessarily mean lower yields. Maize plants can adjust their ear size and kernel number, a process known as flex to the ear. So even if with fewer plants, each one can produce a larger, fuller ear of corn. For instance, an ear might have 40 kernels or 30 along its length, and the kernels around its circumference might range from 10 to 20. Farmers often have questions about fertilization. Should they apply fertilizers through their planters? And if so, how? Should they use liquid or dry fertilizer? Many South African farmers have faced difficulties in preparing their fields for the upcoming season, including building their fertility levels back up in the fields due to time and financial constraints. Using a planter to apply fertilizer can be an effective and efficient approach. There are different techniques to do it, such as in-furrow application. In-furrow fertilization has become less popular for fertility applications because when fertilizers are placed close to the seeds, the soils can draw moisture away from the soil, which is essential for seed germination and growth. While in-furrow applications allow for some fertilization, the rate must be within tolerable limits, especially when using dry fertilizer. High concentration in fertilizer can cause the seed and seedling to burn, ranging from very little to severe burning. Prominent agronomists Darren and Brian Hefty strongly advise against placing dry fertilizer in the farrow. If using a liquid fertilizer in the farrow, they recommend choosing a low salt product and applying it at a low rate, as it is critical to avoiding damage. When burning occurs, farmers typically observe poor germination, and in cases where germination does occur, plants, particularly maize, may exhibit deformities like baggy ripping. Using high salt fertilizer at excessive rates can lead to significant yield losses, which is the last thing farmers want, especially after investing heavily in fertilizers. Another thing to keep in mind is that some nutrients like boron, sulfur, and high rates of nitrogen aren't safe to apply in the farrow. That said, these nutrients are essential for plant growth and still need to be applied. As they point out, If fertilization has to be done at planting time, you'll need to find another method besides in-furrow application for those specific nutrients. Many farmers who have been applying fertilizers with planters for years have adopted the 5x5 method, placing the fertilizer 5 centimeters to the side and 5 centimeters below the seed. While this may seem close to the seed, that small amount of soil between the seed and the fertilizer creates a much safer buffer, allowing for the use of fertilizer at high rates. The key idea is to spread out the fertility more effectively, especially when working with high fertility levels. For example, in a low fertility field, especially if it's a rented land where you don't plan to build up the soil long term, bending with a planter makes sense. However, there's only so much you can apply in one spot. To maximize fertility, you might want to apply a bit in the farrow, then use 5x5 method on both the left and the right sides of the seed. This way, you're placing fertilizer in 3 different spots, which can result in significantly more fertility in the area overall. If you're a farmer on a build program, similar to the Hefty brothers, you might use broadcasting for nutrients like potash, zinc or sulfate, and then feed the plant with liquid fertilizer through the planter. Use both methods because while they are building soil fertility, they don't rely solely on the planter for the build program. This is because often applying too much through the planter can help the crop rather than helping it.